Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. On behalf of the Islamabad Policy Institute, I formally welcome you all to today's webinar titled Palestine, a Call for Action. Today's event is taking place in the backdrop of the latest tensions arising in the Palestinian territories by indiscriminate aggression of Israel. The policymakers and representatives of various political parties would discuss the ongoing crisis in Palestine and explore how Pakistan and other Muslim countries could practically help the Palestinians. Speakers will make actionable recommendations for the governments of the Muslim world. With this brief introduction, I would request Executive Director of Islamabad Policy Institute, Professor Syed Sajjad Bukhari, to deliver his welcome and introductory remarks. Professor Syed Sajjad Bukhari is the founder of Islamabad Policy Institute. He is currently heading IPI as its Executive Director.
Senator Mushahid Hussain Sayyid, worthy panelists, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to today's webinar organized by Islamabad Policy Institute to deliberate on the present situation in the wake of Israel's flagrant attacks in occupied Palestinian territories, particularly deadly bombing of Gaza, where civilian population is being targeted. We all in Pakistan and across the Muslim world have witnessed with deep concern and anguish worsening humanitarian situation in the occupied Palestinian territories. As we know, for nearly 2 weeks now, tension has been running high in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood of east of Jerusalem and at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, particularly after the recent verdict of an Israeli court to force out Palestinians from their generations-old homes and pave way for the Jewish settlers. This decision came during the holy month of Ramadan, and subsequently Israeli forces and settlers assaulted Palestinians. Within days, tension spread to Gaza as Hamas announced to retaliate against Israeli assaults on Al-Aqsa Mosque and Sheikh Jarrah if they were not halted. In response, Israel unleashed military might on the unarmed civilians of Gaza Strip. Israeli air raids have targeted residential complexes, killing and maiming children, women, and men indiscriminately. This time, Netanyahu's regime has been emboldened through the silence of the international community, particularly the United States, United Nations, and Europe, to even flatten a complex housing leading international organizations, including Associated Press and Al Jazeera. Meanwhile, the international community has been slow to condemn Israeli onslaught against the civilians in Gaza. UN Security Council has so far failed unanimously. UN Security Council has so far failed to unanimously condemn Israel. Executive Committee of the OIC held an emergency session and condemned Israel's naked aggression. Time has come to convene an emergency summit of OIC and for the Muslim countries to break their diplomatic ties with Israel. In this backdrop, this webinar is being held at a critical time. By now, it is obvious to the world that it is not a conflict, but a massacre by an occupying force. International community through United Nations needs to exert its responsibility to protect the Palestinian people against Israel's naked aggression against their civilian population. Innocent civilians are dying, and this will only increase radicalization and extremism across the region. To address the situation, few urgent measures are required. First, key Muslim nations should come together and impress upon the Western governments, United Nations, and European Union to ensure necessary steps for addressing the dire situation and working towards de-escalation through UN brokered ceasefire. Second, OIC, through a unanimous resolution, should categorically condemn the Israeli army's continuous and indiscriminate attacks on the civilians in Gaza and call on Israel to halt eviction of the people of Palestine from their century-old homes. For this, Muslim government should provide international legal assistance to the Palestinian Authority for taking up their just grievances at the International Court of Justice. Third, Muslim countries should organize and immediately send humanitarian relief to the besieged people of Gaza and occupied Palestinian territories. Fourth, Muslim countries need to hold urgent defense talks and explore military and non-military options to help besieged people of Palestine and restore peace and security in Gaza and across the occupied Palestinian territory. With this, I look forward to hearing from our esteemed panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your providing us a comprehensive overview of the ongoing situation in Palestine. Now I would like to introduce our session chair and speakers for today's event. Our distinguished session chair for today's event is Senator Mushaz Hussain, who is Chairman, Senate Foreign Affairs Committee. We express him our gratitude for gracing the event with his presence. Then moving to the brief introduction of our worthy speakers. Our first panelist for today's webinar is a guest from Palestine, Dr. Basim Naeem, who is head of the Council on International Relations in Gaza and former Palestinian Minister of Health. He's also attending the event. We warmly welcome him to our today's event. Then our next panelist is Maulana Tahir Mahmood Ashrafi Sahib. Maulana Ashrafi is a renowned Islamic scholar and currently serving as Special Assistant to Prime Minister of Pakistan on Religious Harmony. He is also the Special Envoy of Pakistan for the Middle East. Thank you, Maulana Sahib, for taking time out of your busy routine for the event, which is of great importance for the Muslim world. Then we have with us a veteran politician and senior political leader, Senator Faratullah Babar Sahib. Senator Babar is Secretary General of Pakistan People's Party. Welcome to our webinar, sir. Then our next panelist is Liaquat Baloch Sahib. He is a senior political leader and Naib Amir of Jamaat-e-Islami Pakistan. We welcome and thank him to be with us today. We are also grateful to Ms. Islamabad, Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs, for joining us today. Then our last speaker for the event is Allama Raja Nasir Abbas, who is Secretary General of Majlis-e-Wahdat al-Muslimin. Thank you, Allama Sahib, for your availability. I would also like to note the presence of representatives of Islamabad-based think tanks. On behalf of IPI, I wish to thank all of you for sparing time to be with us. With this brief introduction, now I would like to hand over the session to our chair, Senator Michelle Sen. Over to you, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Good afternoon from Islamabad. And my compliments to Professor Bukhari Saab and his able and talented team at the IPI, the Islamabad Policy Institute, for taking this initiative in a very timely manner on the most important issue facing the world, facing Pakistan, facing the Muslim world. And I would like to start off by warmly welcoming all the diverse and distinguished guests, especially Dr. Basim Naeem, who will start off. Before I hand over to him, Tahir Ashraf Saab hai maujud? Yes, my good friend Tahir Ashrafi Saab is here. And Tahir Ashraf Saab kidhar nazar nahi aa rahe? वो है उधर, ठीक है बस. His Excellency Tahir Ashrafi, who is the Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on Middle East and Interfaith Harmony, and he just came from a very successful visit to Saudi Arabia with the Prime Minister. This is going to be an important session. I'll just pick out the thread from where Professor Sajjad Bukhari Saab mentioned. He said that we should go to any extent to support the struggle of the people of Palestine. And this is what the father of the nation, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, said in February 1946 to the New York Times. He was asked by the New York Times correspondent, what is Pakistan's view on Palestine? He said, we can go to any length to support Palestine. And then the correspondent asked the American journalist, what do you mean by any length? He said, any length means all options available, including violence if necessary. This is Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, February 1946, before the creation of Pakistan. And then when Pakistan came into being, he wrote letters to President Truman of USA and Prime Minister Attlee of Britain, opposing the Jewish immigration to Palestine and supporting Palestinian right of self-determination. So for Pakistan, and this is the stated policy of the state, which the government of Pakistan is currently also following, we cannot compromise on the issue of recognition of Israel. We want a free and independent Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital. And that is enshrined in the United Nations resolutions. And at the same time, we express full solidarity with the people of Palestine who are struggling against brutal Israeli occupation. And in that context, we would like the blockade to end. We would like the cessation of Israeli aggression. And Pakistan government has also announced, and we fully support that, the sending of immediate humanitarian supplies to Gaza. And our foreign minister is also in New York, along with the foreign minister of some other Muslim countries, especially Palestine, Turkey, and Tunisia. So we hope that it can be a joint initiative. And at the same time, I would also urge that we demand the war crimes trial of Israel in the relevant international courts, including the European Court of Human Rights, because bombing non-military targets like children, women, and civilians, and also attacking media outlets like Al Jazeera is a war crime. And yesterday, Yusuf Abu Hussein, one Palestinian journalist, has also been martyred. And finally, I would say that if some of the Muslim countries, especially Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Indonesia, Nigeria, they can join hands and send a joint letter to President Biden, send a letter to the UN Secretary General and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights. I think that will also make a difference. Pakistan stands firmly with the Muslim Ummah and is playing a leadership role on this crisis, because Palestine issue, like Kashmir, is part of the Pakistani DNA. So I conclude my opening comments, and now I hand over to Tahir Ashrafi Saab. Tahir Saab, aap Bismillah karein janab. मैं सिर्फ कहूंगा कि जरा इख्तिसार से बात हो तजावीज़ दें और अपना तजिया दें, 7 मिनट में अगर ख़त्म कर लें तो बहुत अच्छा है। 7 minutes each for every 5 to 7 minutes. Please don't repeat what has been said. जो बात कह दी है प्रोफेसर साहब ने या मैंने, वो रिपीट ना करें, कोई नई बात करें और तजावीज़ दें, ठक ठक ठक, करना क्या है, कैसे करना है जी। ताहिर साहब अपनी माइक खोल दो यार, तो आवाज आ रही है मेरी? माइक थोड़ा ऑफ है, किसी मुंडे की ड्यूटी लगाओ या किसी कुड़ी दी कि वो माइक को थोड़ा ऑफ करे, ऑन करे दे, बटन दबाना होगा है। अंदलीब अब्बास साहिबा, लेडीज फर्स्ट, आप शुरू करें, बिस्मिल्लाह करें। Where is मैडम अंदलीब अब्बास साहिबा, पार्लियामेंट्री सेक्रेटरी ऑन फॉरेन अफेयर्स? जी अंदलीब साहिबा शुरू कर दें, बिस्मिल्लाह करें।
Thank you.
जी प्लीज स्टार्ट।
Thank you so much, Ji, for Islamabad Policy Institute and my chair of the session and all the august distinguished guests. We are here to speak on a very important topic, Palestine, a call to action. And like you very clearly told us, that Palestine is an issue where we all talk about it a lot, and it has been there for a long time. There has been various actions in place, but nothing concrete has come out of it. And every year we do make statements and we do make resolutions, but we see Israel becoming bolder and bolder, and now reaching everywhere in Gaza, regardless of whether they are children or women or whether they are hospitals or communication centers. So for us as Pakistanis, like very rightly mentioned, Palestine is core of our foreign policy, just like Kashmir. And we have to deal with Palestine not just when there is a disaster in it and there's catastrophe in it, but we have to deal with Palestine on a constant platform. And that is why the platform is what we need to look at. I think each person in Pakistan is very cognizant of the fact that Palestine is an issue which we can talk about and dearly concentrate upon. But unless something happens concrete, it will not make any difference to it. So there are various angles on which we need to work upon. One is, of course, the political angle. And as you've seen, that one of the problems that we've had in the past, why actions have been far and few in between, has been that the lack of voice in the Muslim world. So the Prime Minister went to Saudi Arabia and he talked to the head of OIC. The OIC has called a meeting on it, and we are trying now to lobby. So the idea is a united, loud, impactful voice. The first thing is to gather forces within the Islamic world and to make the voice so loud and so impactful that some difference is made in the ears of the West, especially. So the OIC, as you saw, the foreign minister has been accompanied by 3 other foreign ministers, and we hope that once he is there in New York and the UNGA session takes place, there are other foreign ministers who are there, and meetings are lined up for them to join this action of first of all having a ceasefire and then having a long-term solution and giving them the rights of self-determination as enshrined by the United Nations. So for the United Nations to move, we need united Muslims and united Ummah and united forces to appeal to it. So that's the first point that we need to have. United Nations to have a concrete, impactful role. We need to have United Nations of OIC and other nations to join us. And I think the foreign minister is very cognizant of this fact. The prime minister is talking to China, has talked to, and the foreign minister is talking to Malaysia, Indonesia, Sudan, African Muslim countries, and all the other OIC nations as well. And that's where we need to put our weight behind more so. The second point that we need to be cognizant about, and I think that is a slight advantage we have in Palestine cause compared to the Kashmiri cause. In the Kashmiri cause, communication breakdown is total. So it's very difficult for us to have a first-hand view of what is happening over there. And as you saw, what Israel did was that they bombed the communication tower in Al-Jalala, where there was Al Jazeera and so many others, but the social media is still on. In India, the problem we are facing is that Twitter, whenever it tries to give India statements or show Kashmir, those accounts are taken down. Facebook is heavily censored. But so far, with the advantage that we have in Palestine is that we are able to have the videos, the visuals through the social media, the alternative media. And that has what has moved the conscience of the world so far. And I think that is the most powerful thing we'll have to use. Because unfortunately, as far as the electronic media is concerned, the Western media is concerned, it is still governed by the Jewish lobby. And censored statements are going to be coming up. Videos are not going to be that potent over there. So we over here, and Pakistan has made some progress on it, that we also have not that advanced, but we have a very vibrant youth on the social media. So we need to collect our forces together. Al Jazeera has some forces together, and that is why Pakistan, Turkey, other nations have to not only be working on a social media strategy of making these things viral during this occasion. And once the ceasefire happens, we just sort of go into our lull and back into our lives. We need to have a separate forum in OIC, which is completely built on the expertise of keeping the social media alive, even when there is peace in the region, and have a concrete strategy of exposing Israel, of exposing the theme that.
Ma'am, could you please conclude in 2 minutes, because we are running short of time.
Right. So that's my second suggestion. My third suggestion is to form a forum of international civil society organizations. Pakistan has just made a move on UNHRC forum, and we have requested them that the UN human rights, where are you? We want to call a sort of a session on that. And we are hopeful that we'll be joined by others to put pressure on them to call a session on that. But there is Amnesty International. There are other organizations. There are local organizations. There are Islamic organizations. There are human rights organizations. And we need to endorse celebrities on it. So my request would be that just like Bella Hadid, who's a very big celebrity, has been taking the Palestine cause on, and the West is listening to her because she's in the West. Similarly, we need to have civil society moving. Amal Clooney, she's from Lebanon, celebrities, we need singers, we need a whole civil society movement all over the world to be able to keep on raising this voice throughout. So these are my 3 suggestions to keep the Palestine cause alive. As Nelson Mandela said, we know too well that no freedom is complete without the freedom of Palestinians. And we also know that you don't need to be a Muslim to stand up for Gaza. You just need to be human. So let's all be human, raise this voice, collect people. This is the moment, this is an opportunity. It's not just a Pakistani opportunity. It is an opportunity for the human conscious to raise and stand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Annalisa Saiba. Very positive and constructive suggestions, and I think it's a way forward. Please send us a copy also. We have recorded your speech, and send a copy to the foreign minister also, because I think this is the way forward. We have to have a broad united front. It's not just Muslims, but the international community also will speak up. बहुत मेहरबानी शुक्रिया. अब मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा हाफिज ताहिर अशरफी साहब, अभी वो ताज़ा दम होके आए हैं फ्रॉम द होली लैंड सऊदी अरेबिया से, और बड़ा कामयाब दौरा रहा है, बड़े दबंग तकरीर होगी. मैं कह ठक 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 गल करो, लंबी कहानी ना पाना, टू द पॉइंट. Mr. Tahir Ashrafi is a very strong exponent of Muslim causes, mashallah. Or what is the way forward? Over to you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. बहुत शुक्रिया मुशाहिद साहब. अल्लाह ताला सलामत रखे आप सबको, सब दोस्तों को. अस्सलाम वालेकुम. गुजारिश ये है कि जो तो पाकिस्तान की हुकूमत कर रही है वो आपके सामने है, अभी अंदलीब अब्बास साहिबा ने भी बताया, लेकिन हकीकतन ये अलमिया तो अब इंसानी अलमिया बन गया है, इस्लामी या मुसलमानों से भी हट के जो इस वक्त सूरत हाल है। आज सुबह मुझे फ़लस्तीन से बताया गया प्रेसिडेंट ऑफिस से कि गजा के अंदर जो 7 से 14 साल के बच्चे घरों में हैं, उनको भी आज सुबह इसराइलियों ने आके घरों से निकाल के गिरफ्तार करना शुरू कर दिया। इसमें एक जो मजबूत आवाज है वो तो यही है, आप हजरात हैं, हुकूमत के साथ साथ सिविल सोसाइटी है, जो मुफक्किरीन हैं, दानिश्वर हैं, वो इस आवाज को बुलंद करें और किसी तरीके से इस इंसानी अलमिये को जो है, इसकी सबसे पहला तो मामला सीज फायर का है, जिसकी जितनी भी तवक्कुआत की जा रही थी वो अब तक उसमें नाकामी हुई है। खा वो मिस्र की कोशिश है, फ्रांस की है, या अमेरिका की है, या सऊदी अरब की है, या हमारी है। अब ये तो मैं समझता हूँ मुशाहिद साहब, आपका आलमी सतह पे भी और मुल्की सतह पे दोनों जगहों पे आपकी बहुत बड़ी नजर है सारे मामलात पे। जरूरत इस बात की है कि जिस तरह कौमी असम्बली में हिज़्ब इख्तिलाफ और हिज़्ब इक़्तिदार दोनों इस काज पे जमा हुई और इकट्ठे उन्होंने बहुत सी ये करारदाद पे इत्तफाक किया, इस तरह एक हमारी तरफ से भी एक कौमी पॉलिसी बने, कश्मीर का मसला हो या फलस्तीन का मसला हो, कि हमें करना क्या है, हमें आगे किस तरह बढ़ना है, और आलमी दुनिया को हमने इससे इस तरफ मुतवज्जे करके कोई इससे इस्तिफादा कैसे करना है। जहां तक अरब दुनिया की बात है, आधे अरब ममालिक जो हैं वो इसराइल से ताल्लुकात कायम कर चुके हैं, जिनके नहीं हैं वो इस तरफ जा रहे थे, अब मुमकिन है इस हादसे की वजह से रुक जाएं थोड़ी देर के लिए। तो एक कौमी पॉलिसी और फिर उसके बाद एक आलमी पॉलिसी जो है, अभी हम जब गए हैं सऊदी अरब तो वहां पर अमीर मोहम्मद बिन सलमान से और जो इस्लामी ताउन तंजीम के सेक्रेटरी जनरल हैं उनसे जो इमरान खान साहब की मुलाकातें हुई, उसमें भी यही बात उन्होंने कही कि एक पॉलिसी हमें मुश्तरका बनानी चाहिए और अग्रेसिव पॉलिसी भी हो, कोई अमली भी उसमें किरदार नजर आए, सिर्फ वो कागजी हद तक उस तरह ना हो। तो जब तक कोई अमली इस सूरत सामने ना आए, और फिर इस बार तो हम देख रहे हैं कि मुस्लिम दुनिया में एहतजाज की निस्बत जो यूरोप अमेरिका है वहां एहतजाज ज्यादा हो रहा है। तो अगर इस चीज को भी हम आगे लेके चलें, देखें, और एक मैकेनिज्म जो है वो ऐसा बन जाए और एक कौमी सतह पर चलें, हुकूमत को भी करना चाहिए, लेकिन जिस तरह माशाल्लाह आप साहिबान सारे यहाँ जो बैठे हैं, बाबर साहब भी मौजूद हैं, आप भी हैं, बाकी साहिबान, कि एक कौमी सतह के ऊपर कोई कमेटी, कोई कौमी सतह के ऊपर कोई इस तरह का कोई फोरम हो जो इसको कौमी सतह पे भी और आलमी सतह पर भी इस काज को, ये दोनों कश्मीर और फलस्तीन जो है, इनको लेकर आगे बढ़े और मौजूदा हालात में आप रहनुमाई करें। हकीकतन मैं आपको अर्ज करूं कि ठीक है, कल हम यौम यकजहती फलस्तीन मना रहे हैं, कल मुझे फलस्तीनी सफीर ने बताया कि जी मेरे पास तो पाकिस्तानी करोड़ों रुपए लेके आ रहे हैं, लेकिन हमारी पॉलिसी नहीं है कि हमने पैसे वसूल करने हैं या इमदाद वसूल करनी है। ये भी एक हमारे सामने होना चाहिए, कौम में जज्बा है। और फिर तीसरा वो एलिमेंट जो इसको इस्तेमाल करता है कुछ और मकासद के लिए, वो भी हमारे सामने होना चाहिए कि खुदा ना खास्ता अगर इसमें कौमी क़यादत कोई किरदार अदा नहीं करती है, वो नहीं बोलती है, या वो कोई अमली तौर पे उस तरह सामने नहीं आती, तो वो एलिमेंट जो बैठा हुआ है कहीं छुप के, या उसको मौका नहीं मिल रहा थोड़ा बहुत कौमी एक्शन प्लान या उस तनाजुर में, वो फिर इस खला को पूरा करेगा, फिर हम एक नई मुसीबत में मुब्तला हो जाएंगे मुल्क के अंदर। तो मेरी तो इसमें यही गुजारिश है कि इसमें एक मजबूत आवाज जो है वो, अगरचे हम देख रहे हैं आलमी सतह के ऊपर सऊदी अरब ने जो पिछली उनकी 5-6 माह से या 1 साल से फलस्तीन के मसले में थोड़ा सा मौकफ से पीछे आए थे, अब वो फ्रंट पे जाके खेल रहे हैं इसके ऊपर, और फ्रंट पे वो बात कर रहे हैं आके। पिछले 1 हफ्ते से हमने ये देखा है कि कुवैत और सऊदी अरब, अरब दुनिया में उन्होंने बहुत मजबूती के साथ जो है, और फिर पाकिस्तान को और इस्लामी दुनिया में भी फरीक नहीं बनना चाहिए, और पाकिस्तान को ये भी कोशिश करनी चाहिए अपनी हद तक कि जो फलस्तीनी मुख्तलिफ ग्रुप हैं, या फलस्तीनी हुकूमत है, दूसरी तरफ हमास है, और ये हम इसमें भी किसी का फरीक ना बने। हम फलस्तीनियों के साथ हैं।
बिल्कुल सही।
हमारी जो आवाज है वो फलस्तीनियों के साथ होनी चाहिए। किसी एक ग्रुप के साथ जो है, इसको भी, इस काज को मुल्क के अंदर भी और आलमी सतह पर भी हमें इस तकसीम में नहीं जाना चाहिए। मेरी तो यही चंद गुजारिशात है। मैं तो
बहुत
आपका
अच्छा।
तालिब इल्म हूं।
नहीं,
तो
thank you, well done.
जी।
Tahir Sahab, you've done a good job, and please give me your CV. You deserve a promotion immediately. MashaAllah.
बहुत
बड़ी
शुक्रिया।
सही बातें की हैं. I just want to say, Dr. Basim Naim is here, that what Excellency Tahir Ashrafi Sahab has said, I just want to narrate briefly in English, because he said some very important things, and he is the special advisor to the Prime Minister of Pakistan, who just came back from Saudi Arabia. He said that this is an issue of humanity. We should take it forward collectively, and the first thing should be ceasefire, and the killings by Israel should end, and that we should also cooperate with the international community, not just Muslims, because the biggest demonstrations in the world have been held not in Muslim countries, but in Washington and London, in Paris, in Berlin, in Madrid, and New York. So it's a global issue. And he also said the important issue is to formulate a national policy from the Pakistani side, which has to be very clear, which has to be a policy above party lines, including the government and the opposition. And as you can see, the Secretary General of the Pakistan People's Party of Mr. Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and Benazir Bhutto, Senator Farotullah Babar is also here. And so Dr. Basim Naim is here. And he also said we should not become party to any intra-Arab or intra-Palestinian issues or supporting one group or the other group. Our issue is Palestine and the people of Palestine. And he also welcomes the proactive role of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait on this current crisis. So I think after his speech, Dr. Basim Naim, we have been hearing you for the last couple of days also in different things. So welcome. And you are a true mujahid. You are in the front lines. We are proud of you and proud of the Palestinian children, women, and men. We express our full solidarity and support. And at least we are not just raising our voices, we are trying to do something practical. Over to you, sir, Dr. Basim Naim. And after Basim Naim, sir, Senator Farotullah Babar would make his speech. Thank you, sir.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. First of all, I apologize for the delay for different reasons. One of them is the security issues. I'm talking to you again from Gaza, and I'm really proud to talk to our Pakistani brothers and sisters for the third time in 3 consecutive days, which expressing the deepest connection between the 2 countries and the 2 people, and which is reflecting how Pakistani peoples are really worried about the situation here in Palestine, and is reflecting the real trial or attempt to do something. To make it short, and based on my experience in the last few days, I will try to make it short. First of all, I always insist to remember that this is not only a humanitarian issue. This is a pure political issue with humanitarian reflections. Yes. It is an occupation. It is an occupied territory. It is a great violation of international law. Second thing, this is, if we want or not, we as Palestinians, we are in the front line defending our land, defending our holy places, our holy cities, Al-Quds and Al-Aqsa. But at the end, it is not only the Palestinian problem. Palestine is a Waqf Islami, and it is the property of all Muslims around the world. And Al-Aqsa Mosque is the first Qibla and the third holiest mosque in Islam. Therefore, there is a duty to all Muslims. I am talking about governments, people, media, parliamentarians to take part in this battle against the occupation, against the oppression. We are trying to do our job, and we are ready to sacrifice everything, really everything. I am talking to you now, and I don't know if I can continue this speech or not, because I'm hearing bombardment everywhere.
Oh my God.
Therefore, this is the duty of all Muslims, not only Palestinians and not only Arabs. again, I am appreciating really these Pakistani efforts for the third day to hear directly from Palestine. Here I have to say, at least at the moment, we are talking about a real massacre. More than 230 Palestinians killed, around 65 of them are children, 39 women, and the rest are elderly and innocent, peaceful men. The Israelis until now, I mean for the 9th day of aggression, they were not able to show one example of a military target they have attacked. And all brothers can see and watch on TV, social media, they can see how families have been, the houses have been destroyed above the families while they are sleeping at night. By the way, they are usually starting the bombardment at 1 or 2 a.m. while most of people are trying to sleep. They cannot sleep, but they are inside their houses waiting for their faith, for their qadr. And no one is safe, no one is secure. I have to say here that Israel, the Zionist entity, to continue here its project on the Palestinian territories have two main factors and two main things in the hand. First of all, their own military strength, which has been showed that they were not able to defend themselves when they have to face a real resistance. They have all kinds of weapons, the most sophisticated weapons. They are the strongest power in the region. And the second card in their hand to protect themselves and to continue their aggression and their project here on the ground in Palestine is the international support, in particular by the United States. Therefore, if Pakistanis or Muslims everywhere, if they at this moment for any reason cannot come to Palestine and carry weapons to defend Al-Aqsa or Quds or Palestine, I can understand this very well. But the other option, as I said, Israelis have a strong, unlimited, blind support from the international community. One sign of this, that America have used 72 times veto against UN resolution. And lastly, in the last week, America alone have blocked UN security meeting 4 times in order to avoid a condemnation of the Israeli massacre.
This is shameful. Therefore, and we reject that and we condemn it. Very shameful.
Yes, I know. I mean, therefore, Muslims, if they cannot now come now and fight against the occupation, but they have a lot to do, and they can do a lot. First of all, I agree fully with Sister Andalib about her suggestions, but I disagree with the Brother Tahir that we have to engage with the international community because the demonstration were more in the West. The normal expectation is to have the biggest demonstration in the Arab and Islamic world. But unfortunately, they were able to fragment the Arab world and to initiate and to launch internal problems and clashes in Syria and Libya and Yemen and everywhere, so that Muslims and Arabs against Iran, against Pakistan, against Turkey, so that Arabs and Muslims are now busy with their own problems. We have, when it comes to Palestine, I think we can, maybe you hear that there are a lot of bombardments here. I think we have to neutralize all these internal Muslims or Arabs internal problems to concentrate on the strategic threat, which is the Zionist entity in the region. Therefore, we have really to be engaged with the international community. We have to form coalitions from parliaments, from countries, from different coalitions to exercise enough pressure on the international community, at least to protect the international law. If they cannot give the Palestinians the chance to reach their goal by liberation of the whole Palestine from the river to the sea, but at least they can give them a chance. They can at least protect the international law and the international legitimacy. What we have seen in the last few days, Arab League have a meeting. What is the result? Very weak words, very weak statements. We have a meeting from the OIC. Okay, nice words, but what's next? Nothing, no actions, nothing serious to send a clear message to the international community as the Western is sending it to Israel. Enough is enough. They have to say this. Enough is enough. We cannot wait more to see more children and more families and more women slaughtered. The second thing is media. I agree fully with all those who are proposing, first of all, to Sister Andalib said very important thing, that we have to keep the Palestine issue present, not only in peacetime, not only in war times, but also in peace times. I have to say there is no peace here, sister. Maybe it is quiet, it is calm a little bit, but there is no peace. We here in Gaza are besieged like so some Western figures described Gaza as an animal farm or the biggest open air prison. We are besieged now for more than 16 years here, 2 million people in the biggest open air prison. Therefore, there's no peace. But I agree with you fully that we have to keep Palestine in the center of our interest, of our conscience, not only in war times or aggression times. Therefore, I think we have a big chance. The big demonstrations we see now in America itself, 300,000 of people going to the street to raise their voices against the oppression and to shout loudly, free Palestine. This is not a simple thing. This is a big change, a big strategic change. And we are waiting for more and more. Therefore, media is very important. The Zionist narrative is dominating everywhere. I'm making interviews with all kinds of Western media. The first question is why you are launching rocket against civilians in Israel, as if we are the oppressor and as if we are the aggressors. Yesterday, if any one of you have watched TV and have seen Netanyahu presenting himself in front of 70 diplomats, 70 ambassadors as a victim. He is presenting himself as the victim and Palestinian as the oppressor. Where are our diplomats, our ambassadors everywhere to show the reality? To send a strong message from, again, no excuse for anyone based. I think today you can get all the information you need in real time. Sometimes some people see the events in Gaza earlier than I can see it. Therefore, I think media is very important. The third thing is humanitarian aspect. We are living in a very dire situation. You cannot imagine 85% of Palestinians in Gaza who are fighting the occupation, who are fighting against the strongest power in the region, 85 of them are below poverty line, living below poverty line. 80% of them are depending on international aid to secure their food. 95% of our water is undrinkable. We get electricity sometimes for 2 hours, 3 hours in 24 hours. 60% of our young people are unemployed. Therefore, where is the humanitarian activities to support the Palestinians on the ground, to encourage their steadfastness and to keep sticking to their land? I am sure if anyone wants to do something, he will find the way. We are ready to help anyone to do something. I know that the situation in Pakistan is not in its best conditions or ideal conditions, but it is a kind of symbolic solidarity with your brothers and sisters here on the ground. Not only, by the way, in Gaza. I am talking also about Al-Quds Al-Quds is suffering a lot and a lot from the Israeli occupation, not only during war times, but day by day, they are fighting for each centimeter to continue survive. They have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep their houses above standing. Therefore, we have here, for example, I am not talking this to blame anyone, but I am talking as examples. We have the Indonesian hospital. We have a lot of Malaysian mosques. We have a lot of Algerian or schools. I think there are a lot to do, and we can do it. And we have not to wait until the war ended to intervene, to help the people here on the ground. Especially when you are working in the humanitarian aspect, it's much easier to engage with the international community, with the international organization. You can do it through UNRWA, you can do it through WHO, you can do it through UNICEF, you can do it through a lot of international organization to help the people to continue again standing here and steadfastness of the people on the ground. I think what you are doing is very important. These webinars and these gatherings are really very important, but the battle is really very serious on the ground. You are talking about the lives of people, you are talking about your holy places, you are talking about Palestine. We should not wait until we talk about Palestine like we are doing about Andalus in Spain. I think all Arabs, all Muslims, all free people. Why should I see a big Jewish community today in New York or in the United States going to the streets to demonstrate against Israel, against the Zionist entity, and to shout loudly, Israel is an apartheid? I think we can do a lot. The situation on the ground is very serious. We might reach, because there are a lot of intensive negotiations about a ceasefire. We might reach a ceasefire within the next hours or maybe days. Hopefully, we will not lose more and more of our beloved people. But this, again, doesn't mean that the solidarity with Palestine, with Gaza, with Al-Quds, or the work for Palestine, for the liberation of Palestine will end at this moment. I think Palestine must be a central issue for all Arabs and Muslims everywhere, at every time, not only during such escalation. You cannot compare Palestine and what's happening here with the situation anywhere in Syria or in Yemen or in Libya, with all our love and dua for them, because it is really, we know all lives we are losing in Libya or in Yemen or Syria, it is only serving the Zionist entity, is only serving Israel and its project. This fragmentation of Arabs and Muslims and this exhaustion of the resources of Arab Muslims in internal conflicts, internal struggles, this is only serving the presence of this entity. Therefore, I thank you again and again. I hope at the end of this webinar, we can see more practical suggestions and proposals. There are a lot of areas where we can work, and we are ready to help anyone if he need. I have forgotten to talk about parliaments. Parliaments have a strong power. Look, without these parliaments, some governments have normalized their relationship with Israel. Yesterday, unfortunately, I have heard some news that some Arabic ambassadors were in the meeting with Bibi Netanyahu in his brief about the confrontations. Can you imagine that Arabs today, and they were, by the way, in the conference of Trump when he announced the so-called deal of the century. This was unimaginable for us a few years ago, and therefore parliaments have a strong power to prevent the recognition of Israel or any kind of normalization with this entity. You can support BDS campaigns this is the minimum anyone can do. If you go to the supermarket, you should not take any goods or from the entity or from any company supporting this entity. And this is very, very effective and influential. Otherwise, Israel would not go to the Americans and to the Western countries to issue rules and regulations to consider BDS as anti-Semite and to consider BDS as an aggression, because it is very, very effective. It is delegitimizing the entity. It is presenting this Zionist entity in its reality as an aggressor, as a fascist, as a racist, and therefore a lot can be done. And thank you very much. And I hope we will see soon in a big delegation from Pakistan here in Gaza and then in liberated Al-Quds, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much, Dr. Basim Naeem, for apprising us about the ongoing crisis in Palestine. Indeed, it is a failure of international organizations to reach on a just and lasting solution about Palestine. And you have drawn our attention towards many other important aspects of the crisis. Thank you so much for joining us and for your deep insights. With this, I would request Senator Faratullah Babar Saab to please present his comments on the issue. Hello?
Hello.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Thank you very much. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. First of all, I should like to compliment the Islamabad Policy Institute and Professor Bukhari Saab for organizing this webinar on Palestine. Thank you very much, Bukhari Saab, for also inviting me to express my views on this. The story of Palestine, the history of Palestine really is a history of tragedy and betrayal. Tragedy, this is the tragedy of a people who have been displaced from their own ancestral home. It's a tragedy of a people, of a nation, half of which are forced to live as refugees outside their country. And the remaining half, which are living in their own country, they are living in ghettos. They can't even reach out to one another without the permission of Israel. So it's a story of tragedy. And what is happening in Gaza today, it only demonstrates as a continuation of the tragedy. And it's a story of betrayal also. Betrayal also because neither the Muslim world nor the international community have done anything to address the grievances and the problems of the Palestinian people. It is basically, it must be recognized, it is an issue of the human rights. It is an issue of a nation, of a people having been deprived and dispossessed of their historical land. Now, in this situation, it's a situation of tragedy and betrayal. Last year, 2020, was really a great betrayal when 4 Muslim countries recognized Israel, and there is no guarantees that the fundamental rights of the Palestinians will be given to them. Without those guarantees, they recognized Israel. It was a year of betrayal when President Trump made so many measures against the Palestinians, including the shifting of the embassy to Jerusalem, including the discontinuation of the $200 million aid, and so on and so forth. Mushahid Hussain Saab had pointed out in the beginning that we shouldn't give suggestions and tuck within 7 minutes. So I would like to give you some suggestions as to what you, the IPI, can do, what the civil society can do, what the government of Pakistan can do, and I think that we should do, and that is something doable. The first thing is that a few days ago, the Human Rights Watch published its report, and in its report, it calls the situation in Palestine, in Gaza, and the atrocities of Israel, it is classified as apartheid and crimes against humanity. We should take forward this narrative that Israel is committing crimes against humanity. And since the International Criminal Court recently also took notice of the human rights violations in West Bank and in Gaza. Therefore, there should be a demand, a specific demand for the trial of war crimes, particularly the latest things what are happening in Gaza. A very strong case can be made out for war crimes against Israel. This can, I think, be done. The second thing I think we should do is the role of the media. Now, the Western media is not projecting the atrocities against the Palestinians. The narrative in the Western media, the print and the electronic media, is that Israel is exercising its right of defense. I would suggest that there should be greater use of the social media, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, although these social platforms also have placed restrictions. But I think that we can make use of the social media. And how about Bukhari Saab, that tomorrow, when Pakistan will be observing strikes throughout the country to express solidarity with the Palestinians, probably the IPI can take an initiative as a trend setter on the social media. On the Twitter, you can start a trend. The trend can be named in any manner. It can be stop bombing of Gaza or end of demand ceasefire, whatever it is. But I think that you can take the lead, IPI can take the lead to have a social media trend tomorrow. The third thing is that, and this is my suggestion, and that is that you see, we must also acknowledge that Pakistan also at some point of time had been unfair to the Palestinians. And I'm recalling the Black September, when Brigadier Ziaul-Haq massacred Palestinians. I would suggest very strongly that we should formally denounce, dissociate ourselves from that, and we should denounce the happening, the Black September. This will not achieve anything, but at least it will enhance the solidarity with the Palestinians if we denounce Black September. The fourth thing that I would suggest is, and Tahir Ashrafi Saab also pointed that out, that we should really not do anything which will undermine the unity of the Muslim world. We have seen that the West, the United States and other countries, they just don't see reason and logic. They are solidly behind Israel. Even in two countries, Hungary and Austria, even Austria, as a mark of solidarity with the Israelis, they took out the flags of Israel. So the only block of countries that can really be of some help to Palestinians are the Muslim world. Therefore, I would suggest that Pakistan should not do anything. No Muslim country should do anything which will increase friction and dissensions within the Muslim world. And I think that the setting up of the Islamic military alliance against Yemen, I think that is one area, that is one place where the Muslim world is likely to be divided. And since that alliance is headed by a Pakistani ex-COAS, I would very strongly urge that General Raheel Sharif should voluntarily pack up and come back. And if he's not coming back, then the government of Pakistan should, ask him to come back, because this is the minimum that we can do, and that is that the Muslim world should not be further divided. The other thing that I would like to suggest is that we should also write letters to the human rights bodies of the United Nations. One is the Human Rights Council, and the Human Rights Council is supposed to take although it is dominated by the Western countries, but if a formal letter and a formal protest and all the data given, it goes to the United Nations Human Rights Council, I think it would be very difficult for the UNHCR, United Nations Council on Human Rights, to ignore that plea. A short while ago, we had Madam Andalib also, and it brought to my mind that, we have in the parliament women caucus. And there are other parliaments in the Muslim countries. which also have women caucuses. And if there are no formal women caucuses, I think that, women who suffer the most when there are wars and conflicts, I think a greater interaction between the women parliamentarians of Pakistan and the women parliamentarians of the Muslim countries, wherever there are parliaments and there are caucuses. I think how to concretize that, it can be discussed, how the Pakistan's Parliament Women Caucus can initiate the dialogue and discussion that can be concretized. But I suggest that the Women Caucus should also be activated. I would also like to suggest that, the governments in the Western countries might be supporting, they are supporting Israel, but the general population in those countries is not as much supporting Israel as the governments are. And that is why we see demonstrations even in America, in London, and day before yesterday, there was in Yemen also. So I think that diaspora, Pakistani diaspora, the expatriate community, that can be mobilized to play a proactive role in all those kind of pro-Palestinian demonstrations. I should also like to suggest that the emphasis now should be, the top priority should be on immediate cessation of hostilities, a ceasefire, particularly after Israeli Prime Minister said that immediate ceasefire, he can't give any time frame. This is very disturbing, very alarming. A voice must be raised that there should be immediate ceasefire, so that all this, what is happening against the people of Palestine, this must come to an end. I should also like to suggest that we should not allow this issue to be hijacked by any one particular group or by any one particular party, whatever it is, because for Pakistan, in the case of Pakistan, regardless of the political party, regardless of whichever government was in place in Pakistan, this has been a cornerstone of our foreign policy. We should also therefore try that, the issue of Palestine is not allowed to be hijacked by one or two militant organizations. And if they are allowed to hijack this, what will happen is that they will then try to advance their own agenda in other issues across Pakistan's borders. So we should be very mindful, very careful that this is an issue in Pakistan which cuts across the political divide. No one militant organization particularly, no one should be allowed to hijack it. So these were some of my suggestions, and I want to thank you very much, Professor Bukhari Saab and your IPI for organizing this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for expressing your insights on the Palestine crisis. You have presented some very powerful and practical suggestions. It is the need of the hour that the Muslim world in general and Pakistan in particular act upon these suggestions and take serious steps towards mitigating the suffering of the Palestinians. I am thoroughly imbued with respect for your noble spirit. All said, I think we have discussed most, if not all, the important aspects of the crisis. I am again grateful to all the speakers and participants who have taken time out of their busy schedules to join the webinar at IPI. Thank you very much. Have a nice day and take care. Allah Hafiz.